Today's video is brought to you by AlmostHeaven.com. Handcrafting at-home saunas since 1977. Want better sleep, less stress, and faster recovery? Now's the perfect time. Shop saunas, cold plunges, hybrids, and accessories. Use our exclusive code at checkout to save 5%. Link below.
Back alongside Bo Parrish, I'm Dave Erickson, virtually here, and today we're talking about one of my favorite topics, and that's goal setting. And goal setting, has a wide spectrum. It can be as simple as a to-do list, or it could be a life goal, and there's so much in between that. And I'm pretty excited about this because, goal setting was a huge part of my life growing up, and we'll get to that. But your first impressions or first thoughts when I say goal setting to you?
Well, I think initially my reaction is I'm enthusiastic, carrying over from our last session about our talk today and setting goals. Because if you think about the very exercise of goal setting, there has to be hope, there has to be excitement, there has to be optimism that goes into the process, or else you wouldn't be making them to begin with. So goals are simply our way of tracking progress towards ultimately wherever it is we want to go in life. And you know what? The great thing is that end destination, it can change. It doesn't have to be the same. But along the way, we need to know how we're doing, just as you and I regularly monitor various metrics with our training when we're swimming, when we're biking, when we're running. The reason we do that is so we can improve and so we can know how close we are from the mark that we're aiming to set. And so goals with family, with faith, with career, with fellowship and friends, it's all just a way of measuring progress, because without measurement, how do we really know that we're making progress? We're not aiming for perfection by any stretch of the imagination, but goals are attainable and they're very much achievable if we know how close we are at any given time. So ultimately, that's going to result in a specific process. And again, we'll get into the process of setting goals as we progress in our talk. But I just wanted to comment initially. I think it's a great idea that we just discussed this huge topic of goals, which everyone is familiar with. But I'd be willing to speculate that not so many people are practice.
One of the early lessons I learned about goal setting is how two main emotions influence the outcome, and that would be fear and desire. Fear keeping you from succeeding, the fear of failure, while desire moving you toward that end goal. And it's so simple, as you just said, is monitoring the progress of these goals. And it can be as simple as having that to-do list and then looking at that list at the end of the day and say, which of these did I accomplish and which ones do I still have left? Same thing can go with athletics, go with career, could be going with relationships. Where are we at? And we're tracking that progress over time. And I still use this mentality of focusing on the positive, the strength and motivation behind the word desire versus falling back from the word fear. Because to me, fear is leaning back from something, whereas desire is leaning in toward your goal.
Absolutely. And so let's talk about those two emotions that you mentioned, specifically within the context of goal setting. On the one hand, we have fear. On the other hand, we have desire. And both can dramatically affect the way that we approach our goals. So let's consider fear to begin with. Fear is listening to that little voice inside of our heads that tells us you're not good enough. You'll never own up. Why even bother? That's a goal that's ridiculous. Who are you to even have that idea? Fear lives by the attitude of what if? What if I'm not accepted? Which ultimately is one of our core desires, one of our core needs, is for that feeling of acceptance. And oftentimes our fear can be a huge stumbling block as we progress in more of our personal goals with family, with relationships, with friends. And so the larger that dialogue becomes in your mind with that little voice that's telling you you can't, the bigger your fears get. But there's amazing power in writing your fears down, which ultimately goals need to be written. So why not start with a self-examination of what is it that I'm truly fearful of as I progress towards my goal? And it's amazing that once you get your goals written down on paper, the power tends to shrink. So the way that I like to say it in the context of faith is rather than telling God how big my problems are, I tell my problems how big my God is. Because I know that problems are inevitable. I know that they're going to occur. There's no reason to be fearful of what's ahead. Now, the first time, as we discussed last week, is always going to be the quote unquote scariest. But if we don't at least write our goals down, how do we know which direction to proceed towards closing that gap? So, fear can be a huge stumbling block. And fear remains large. It remains that big, hairy, audacious monster in your mind. But once you write it down, it has a way of diminishing and shrinking and getting smaller and smaller virtually till it goes away. And then once the fear is gone, you have a laser focus, clear view set on the end goal in mind. Now, on the opposite side, desire. Desire, as you mentioned, is that fuel that allows us to stay in the game. Desire is what puts us in the mindset to even begin to plot our goals. And the goals, again, they need to be specific, they need to be measurable, and they need to be written because we know that what gets written gets remembered. So perhaps we keep a journal once we have our goals written down. Dave, I was doing some research yesterday ahead of our session today, just on this topic matter of goals. And I came across an interesting study that was conducted by Harvard University in the early part of 2000. And out of the graduating class in the year 2000, only 10%. Now, we're not talking about your average run of the mill student. We're talking about Harvard grads. Only 10% had goals that were written down. 10%. And of that 10%, only 3% reviewed those goals on any regular basis. And it found that 3% was 75% more likely to achieve those goals than even the 10% that did write them down, but certainly more than the 90 Harvard graduates that didn't even have their goals written down. So, number one, we think the goal. Number two, we write it down. And number three, we review it on a regular basis. And that could be on a daily basis, depending on how short term your goal is, what the focus is, and how high the priority is to you. But goals need to be written so they can be remembered, and they need to be reviewed on a regular basis.
Some people have what they call a vision wall, where they may take out cut out pictures in a magazine or phrases, and they'll put it on a wall, and they'll just have a dedicated spot to where they can look at this on a regular basis and say, here is what I'm trying to attain. Here's my end goal. This is maybe what I want to look like physically for people who are trying to achieve weight loss. I personally have a whiteboard, and I've written down my goals for 2015, whether they're financial, weight loss, athletic, and other things like that. And I really believe in this written is remembered. And the illusion of fear, and that's what it is to me. It is something created in your brain that's out there, but when you do write it down on paper, it brings it down to scale. It brings it down to reality and on your level where this hope and this desire can overwhelm it. And that's just so exciting to me, because that's the whole thing about your vision walls or these whiteboards, and you have a list that you see on a regular basis. There's my desire. There's my reminder of what I want to achieve. And I'm getting a little bit of goosebumps right now just thinking about how powerful that idea is to have something positive and motivating for you on a regular basis. So just want to echo what you just said.
Fantastic. And on the note of a vision board, I absolutely agree with you. They're very important that you have something tangible to look at over, and let's just say a year period would be an intermediate goal, where we all have lifetime goals. we have seasonal goals, and then we have more short-term laser focus like goals. And so, the context of that is long-term, ultimately, I would love to compete in Kona at the Ironman World Championships. So what does that look like on an intermediate term? Well, for the year ahead, I would like to complete and place in the top 3 of my age group at Ironman Louisville, which has been moved from August to October. And considering that today is the very day that we are welcoming our babies into the world, I have a feeling that my training is going to take somewhat of a backseat for good reason. But that doesn't mean that I still don't have that end goal in mind that will be shaped by a longer term goal, which is competing in Kona. And on a daily, weekly basis, once I figure out how to maintain a balance of work, of being a husband and being a father, and fitting my training into that, I can specifically set 3 different levels of goals: lifetime, intermediate, and short-term focus. All of them build on one another. I like the vision because ultimately that's the end destination. But again, the more short term, the more focused your goals can become, the more likely they are to be meaningful. If you can achieve a victory every single day, you're more likely to stay on that path. You're more likely to be able to deal with the setbacks that will inevitably arise, with the obstacles that will be in your way, because you have the end goal in mind of where it is you're wanting to go. It's like you and I jokingly have said 1,000 times before, if you don't know where you're going, well, you'll get there 100% of the time. No one ever gets in the car and decides, hey, I'm just going to go drive in this direction until I get there. Well, where are you going? Your answer, I don't know. Well, you're going to run out of gas, you're going to run out of money, and then you're going to be in a world of hurt. That's a life without goals.
I've heard this phrase before and I've used it. My wife kind of laughs at me when I say this quote, but no ship sails. No ship. Now I forgot it.
No, stick with it.
No ship sails in a destination. No ship sails. Now oh my.
Ship, water. Well, it'll come to you. And we all had these ways of remembering what's most important to us, because ultimately goals are a reflection of our priorities, and priorities have to do with values, lifestyles, dreams, aspirations. It's inevitable that we dream. It's built into us from birth, but few of us actually take the time and effort to shape our dreams into measurable, attainable goals, which we can assign activities to, therefore increasing the likelihood that we will actually be living our dream.
Here's a phrase I was thinking about. No wind blows in favor of a ship with no destination. So a sailboat.
No wind blows in favor of a ship with no
destination. So if you have no sail up to point you in the right direction, that wind's not going to help you one way or the other. It took me a while to figure that one out, but that's what I was thinking of. And
well, you're rallied, and it's a great it's a great word picture for sure.
One thing I want to ask you about, and I think you have the answer, is what about sharing your goals with other people besides just confining it to your vision wall or your whiteboard or your small to-do list that may be more intimate? What about sharing those goals with other people and the pros and cons of doing that?
Accountability is absolutely essential to achieving your goals, because what gets shared tends to be remembered, because not only are you holding yourself accountable, which we are our own biggest advocates, is that we have a community. And the phrase that I use for it is a personal board of directors, a regular set of people that know what's most important to you. And if you can share your goals and give them authority to speak openly and on a consistent basis, hey, Dave, how you doing? Did you do what you told me you said you were going to do? Because ultimately that's a matter of integrity. And if it's important to you, you will share it with someone else. And again, that's another way to keep that fear locked out, is because others know what you're trying to accomplish. They can help turn that voice inside your head off.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think about the steps that a person needs to take to be accountable to themselves, and it can be as simple as having a reminder in your phone of what's the status update, and planning ahead long term. Even if you, I'm saying, let's back up. If you go short term, let's say I have a goal to accomplish in 6 weeks, so I need to have some sort of system in place to remind me to evaluate my status, whether it's a reminder every week in my calendar to pop up and say, okay, where are you now? What did you accomplish? And reevaluate. Are there other steps that you can think of that would someone can stay on track?
No question. No, and I'm glad you brought that up. So obviously, we're going to start with the end in mind. That being, let's just call it a month-long goal based on where we want to be a month from now. And let's just use the example of losing weight. Let's say a month from now, we want to lose 5 pounds. Okay, so we know that's going to be a product of eating right and exercising and getting appropriate sleep. So either through our own research or through consulting a professional fitness dietitian, we come up with a plan. And that plan is tracked not only on a weekly basis, and perhaps we get a literal physical calendar and we track our progress each day. Now, we don't weigh every day. Your studies actually show that that's detrimental to our progress, but we do pick in ahead of time weekly weigh-ins. So we start on the first of the month, and we get on the scale, we look at the number, say, okay, I want that number to be 5 pounds less. So we engage in our exercise routine. We keep a food log. So at the end of the first week, we have a written record which can be reviewed. Again, we talked about the power of written goals. And we find ourselves on the scale for our first weekly check-in. We look at the number. If it's higher, we review what's just been written and we reassess. If it's lower, we keep doing what we're doing because we know we're moving in the right direction. And so one thing that I also wanted to add about just the whole process of tracking goals is that it tends to lend itself to the to-do list, everything that I have to do. But another advantage of writing down our results is that it creates a record of what we've done. So oftentimes I encourage people who are frustrated that they're not seeing the progress they are towards their goals. They're like, Bo, I'm doing all these things and it's just not adding up. I was like, well, take a minute and consider all that you've done. So yes, continue your to-do list, but I also want you to create a done list. And the way that we do this is we monitor our outgoing emails. We look at our call log and look at all the phone calls we've made. We look at our calendar, the appointments that we had, what was discussed. And again, the purpose of this is to create confidence. It's to create a sense of, gosh, I really have done a lot. Because we know we can't often control outcomes, but we certainly can control activities. So back to our example of taking a 1 month goal of losing weight. After the first week of keeping a food journal and food diary and a journal of all of our workouts, we look to see what that number is. And based on what we see, we adjust. We either increase our exercise, which we probably will as we move towards this end of the month goal of 5 pounds down. And we look to see how our nutrition aided us in our first week progress. We do the same thing at week 2. We look at the number. If it's on track, we keep doing what we're doing. Week 3, week 4, so on and so forth. And then depending on the outcome, we repeat. We first reassess, then we repeat if the results are favorable, and we actually go in a different direction if they weren't. So long-term, short-term execution is that much more practical.
I want to share with you one little story that I experienced at Ironman Arizona 2 years ago. We were at mile 16 on the run, so we have 10 miles to go. and I start passing a gal who's going a little slower. She's kind of fading. And this idea of reflection and mindset and looking at the glass half full, she goes, "Oh my gosh, we still have 10 miles to go." And I was feeling great. I ended up having a great run that day. I said, "Just think, you've already done 16 miles. You've already accomplished 16. Only 10 more to go." So it was a little shift, and I think I saw a little something in her eyes, recognizing what she had accomplished already. And so that kind of goes to your point of looking at what you've written down and having a done list, and appreciating what you've done, reflecting on the positive, on the advancements. Because if you look at the moment, you miss the big picture. And I just want to, again, reemphasize what you just said. I think it's fantastic.
Well, and actually, in that specific situation, I would have said, you've already done 16. Shoot, you've already done 130.6. You're almost home, baby. Fantastic. Well, Dave, what a great talk. And again, this is 100% to your credit. But I think we both realize the importance when it comes to our performance of having regular goals that are not only written, but are reviewed on a regular basis.
And that's because no wind blows in favor of a ship with no destination.
Nailed it.
Nailed it. All right. Thanks, Bo.
Looking for a great at-home sauna at a great price? Get 5% off any indoor or outdoor sauna, cold plunge, or infrared sauna from Almost Heaven with my discount code DAVE, 5% off at checkout. For over 40 years, Almost Heaven saunas have been trusted as the top American home sauna manufacturer. Almost Heaven saunas deliver high-quality products and firmly stands behind the holistic benefits the sauna brings to your mind and your body. Again, get 5% off any order with my discount code DAVE, 5% off at almostheaven.com. There's also a direct link below this video.